I do a lot of poetry, fiction, nonfiction, graphic novels, and comics. But right now I want to focus on poetry since that's sort of what I told Tiffany that I do. uh,
Well, feel free to do whatever you want, quite honestly. We're not really known for our rules, so.
all right. So
And let me mute
now,
everybody.
now that when I was choosing the poems, there's some that I really liked but couldn't share because I'm in the process of sending a lot of poems to different newspapers or online journals like the Quarantine Collection, and normally they don't really want other people to have seen the poem. They want it to be theirs, kind of. And Sylvia knows about this process pretty well because I kind of did a small shout out again to Shift, a journal of a literary journal. Now, these were poems that I wrote before the virus hit, so we can probably go to different times here. And yeah, I actually have it in both English and Spanish. Um, I will, however, read the poem in the language that I wrote it originally. And bear with me that these are just a little bit old. I have perfected my craft since. However, you've been forewarned. And yeah, the next one that I'm going to read it depicts a little bit of what I'm feeling as an international student. Um, and now even more so that I'm in quarantine. And when I read this and I realized that it was like written in 2019, I'm like, whoa, this is almost like telling the future, kind of. Yeah, here it goes. If I miss people when I'm abroad, yet feel like I don't belong when I'm home, will my spirit ever find peace? Or will it stay broken as it is? Where should I go? To stay or be away, I wonder, can there be a middle ground? The answer is no. So there's the dates as proof. Um, and it also kind of ish rhymes in Spanish when I read it over. So that's something I do try my best to incorporate the rhyme and flowery language that you find in poets such as Andrés Ribón, Pablo Neruda, in my poetry, but in English. So it's a little bit more akin to maybe Nabokov or even Byron sometimes. And something that I also like a lot is music. My brother was joking around saying, hey, are you gonna show people your skills? Because I love playing strings and other instruments as well. So I wrote a poem about it, as one does about things that you love. Um, and that's me in 2017 when I had longer hair and a messy braid. Un suave arpegio me relaja mis oídos. I'm gonna change here. Relaja mis oídos, acompañado por acordes que resuenan. Los espíritus caídos, al oír la melodía, despiertan. Así que sigo tocando mi guitarra, decorando. El ambiente con dos y soles, mi guitarra que perteneció a españoles, ahora yace en mis piernas como instrumento. Me calma del exterior lleno del estruendo. Con sus cuerdas que vibran en mis manos cuando mi índice frota el nylon. And the name of this poem is Guitar and was written in 2017 as well. In this summer, I wrote 100 poems and named them The Symphony That Is You. So that's what I call my published, like self-published book per se. It doesn't have an Amazon page yet, but I did share them with a lot of relatives, and it's a really good collection of poems to sort of go back to of where I once was and where I am now. Also, I was writing this. My guess is right, a few family members might see this poem and be confused. So I just want them to know that I am not Satanist, even though I know a bit of demonology. You'll see why. Thank you for coming for my TED Talk. My mom made me ride in a quiet place, for he noticed the frown in my face. What is it that brings you stress? The frequency from the keys increased, their sound akin to drops in a storm. I hope, oh, damn it, I think I messed it up. Wait, yeah. The devil does not know how clouded my mind is, or how greed has blinded me. Hinton published at 17. What have I published at 19? I'm behind the legends. I wonder how I will manage. How will my name go down in history? Will I starve in misery or bask in victory? Tell me, tell me, tell me. What's my future going to be? The anxiety is eating me alive. When Lucifer goes away, I fear my words will be buried with the poems of romantics and dogmas of visionaries. So that's what the warning was for. I did have a story when I was 12, and I'm still working on it, of a girl who was half demon. And as such, I conducted a lot of research into it and realized that there's a belief that there's actually a demon per capital sin. And so Lucifer being pride and Mammon being the one over greed was sort of the themes that I was playing here when creating this poem that's available in my Instagram. And I'll give Tiffany the links later. So yeah, so next one is for my two brothers and my parents, who are they? Yeah, they are watching it. Oh, hi Terry. And the next, siguiente poema es para mis hermanos y mis padres. I'll read it in Spanish, but it's going to be in English to the side. Ojalá que sepan aquellos dos hermanos que su hermana siempre los adorará. Ustedes dos son su orgullo y ella siempre los honrará. Los extrañará desde lejos como sus padres colombianos a quienes anhelará. Para ti en el futuro. To you in the future. And this was written right before I left for college. And I'm really close to my brothers, didn't post any pictures just as I respect their privacy. And then there's another poem here. Now this one is in English, and I thought it was really interesting because it's a post-virus type of poem. This one was written when, due to the whole quarantine and lockdown, one of my favorite poets, Ruby Kaur, she published she was conducting an exercise in Instagram Live. What she did was she took some pages from Emerson's college poetry program with a lot of Zen music in the background. And that's where, thanks to like her prompt, I went off with this poem. And I will explain the prompt later and I'll read the poem first. We met at 2 in the morning when memories of times past ran amok my confused mind, staring at an empty right side of a bed well made. And here you are in my dreams. Not next to me, an invisible string pulls my heart from the shoreline to the college dorm, but my body remains alone at night, clutched by claws of memories once full of glee, now tainted by melancholy. Those strings, don't let me go. Torture me as much as you like, each day I'll endure you more, until one day you feel like yarn and not steel. I know that this hurt means my emotions are strong. My joy and love equate this woe. As I work, you will lay dormant. Even when nostalgia tries to haunt, I'll remember my love with a smile, not a cry. And in months' time, you'll be gone. And the title of this poem was Strings, and the prompt was, the first stanza, the first words are, we met. The poem must be about a trouble or something that causes you discourse. So some people wrote about a divorce, some people wrote about a breakup, many were writing about distance, and I wrote about something that I describe as strings. And then in the second stanza, you do not name the problem yet, but you begin with, and here you are. In the third stanza, you do name the problem, and then you talk to it as if it was like in front of you. What would you tell that problem personified? In the fourth stanza, you sort of, it's almost like the denouement, and it cools down per se, and that's sort of like where you tell that problem where you should be. It's almost like being taken in a journey where it's like you started out with something that was bothering you in the beginning, and when you put it down on the paper, it's not as bad anymore. And what I mean by strings is sort of like that emotion that was in the first poem of always being in like two places at once, where it's like my heart's in Sarasota, but my body's in Colombia. And then when I'm in Sarasota, my heart's in Colombia. And so those are what I call strings per se, because it reminds me of also the red string of fate in Chinese mythology, I believe. And that's those are the poems that I had, though Tiffany did mention that we had a little bit of freedom, so I figured, hey, I kind of do drawings and comics. Might be interested in how I've been spending my time. So in many writer groups that I am a part of, everyone's asking, hey, what is your pandemic book about? Hey, what will your virus novel be about? I don't have a virus novel. Instead, what I do is I write sci-fi, because reality isn't the happiest. I'm really happy with my family, but you know, you can't really go out, beaches are closed. So what I do is that I instead build from scratch, like from my imagination, a universe, and then I have these three characters go on a journey of sorts, and I draw them out. So these are three of the characters. This was done last night at around 3 a.m.
I'm gonna stop you for 1 second. Is there a way that I can, because your poems are still up on the page, maybe I can make your video? Yeah, there you go. Okay. So that everybody can see your drawings better. You know, I saw some of them the other day. They're awesome. So
okay, thank you. So William actually knows a little bit of the beginning of this. To those of you who are not aware, there's a game called Dungeons and Dragons, and so it's where you create a character and you sort of go on like a verbal adventure, like you say, I am a dragonborn wizard and I go to this castle. There's a version of it in the Star Wars universe where there is a race that's similar to like this cute rabbit squirrel mutant, and I chose that as, so my character is like a Kushiban, which is like the squirrel rabbit race, and I called it Gi. And I tampered a little bit with like the design. Like first I was drawing the character, and eventually I got to this design, which is you have like this cute little creature with a giant assault cannon weapon as a contrast. And slowly I sort of like kept adding more characters to the roster. So I figured that I sort of wanted like a contrast, like maybe this gentle giant figure. And that's where Letz's character sort of came through. I also wanted, there's always like that one sarcastic Han Solo of the group. That's sort of like where Sword came along. And I love painting scenes where it's like the more you stare at it, like you can sort of see what's happening in it or what has happened before, be it through, you know, the bullet markings around, shaking hands with the bartender, that sort of small details. I also try to like do a lot of exercises where like I think of the characters, okay, when they're not fighting, guns blazing, all of these aliens, what do they do in their free time? Maybe they like to stare at the stars in like this universe or this planet where you can see the stars in the daylight. Or how do they hang out when they're in the ship? I'm also working on one painting, but it's not done yet. But that's sort of what I have, and it's a process that has taken me years to like find out, because I used to struggle a bit because I love my writing classes. It's just that I don't begin writing my stories. I first draw the scene out, and then from the style or from the expressions or whatever it is that I put on the panel or the paper, that's where my writing comes out, sorry. So it's like draw first, write second, which didn't have much time back in university, and now there's so much time um, that I am doing a lot of that. And actually behind me, I can show a couple of my paintings. One of my, I definitely recommend, and I might write it in the chat actually. His name's Andrea Saravia, and so he's an artist and a writer that lives in Barranquilla, and so he does poetry and very amazing installations. So I wanted to do that kind of with like the world building. You can't really see paintings, but it's a little awkward in Zoom. This is what my painting class looks like. Where like I also create worlds in the paintings that I write in my documents later on. So you have like a small cottages and then lakes almost. This is more of an abstract work in progress, and I don't know how it's gonna fit there, but yep, it manages. It's kind of big, but yeah, I also do a lot of painting on the side as well. Other projects that I've been working on, not sure how it is right now, but I was working in a business idea as well with some classmates of mine. But now that we're all quarantined, not sure where that goes or how that's going to go. But yeah, I was speak a couple of languages, play a couple of instruments, and I write and draw. That's the gist of it. And you have any questions? Yes, I'm leaving it to Tiffany and the audience right now.
Happy to take any questions if anybody has any. So, so are you're a creative writing major, or are you like a visual arts, or?
I'm a creative writing major. I'm minoring in fine arts, business of art and design, and soon film studies as well.
Oh, very cool. That's a lot. That's awesome though. But it's neat to see how you're connecting everything into like the same world or the same stories, or so, and that I know that probably gives you a lot more control over your work moving forward than say you had to go seek an illustrator. Or
I get sort of mixed reviews when I mention that, where I haven't like actually gone to like an editorial and pitched them on my stories yet, but some people tell me that they don't really like it when like the point being, my illustration skills may not be on par with an illustration major. So that's why most comics, but like DC or Marvel, might prefer, someone who was like the major and not the minor. But that's sort of like why I'm leaning a lot towards self-publishing, not because it's a lazy route. If anything, I think it's more difficult when you have to hire publicity on your own, you have to boost your own post, where you also need to be sort of like your own accountant, illustrator, like you're doing 100 things at once. But the payoff is a lot of creative freedom, which to me sounds pretty neat. But yeah, let's fingers crossed that I do see, posters of my characters in Comic-Con or something someday. But aim for the stars,
Well, I thought, yeah, I mean, I thought I know you showed us some of that the other night when we were just sort of hanging out and chatting with Aaron. But yeah, no, your work's great. That's awesome. It's a lot of fun to see. And I don't know. Does anybody else have any other questions or like comments or anything that they want to?
I'm an open book.
Well, I guess you can send me some links to some of your stuff later and I'll make sure we post those if if you have stuff like that. So when we get the video up, we can share that with people. So thank you so much for doing this and for, just for being so connected. And it was really nice meeting you at the conference. So I'm glad you kind of found us and connected with us after that. The timing of all of this, like I'm glad we made it through that to get to this point of, so anyway.
Yep. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
No problem. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye, stay safe.
You too. Bye. Everybody stay healthy.